Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Rockland Sound, where Rockland turns into a Rockland. I am one of your hosts, Tom Osa, and I am joined, as always, with my good friend Mike Doherty in one of the heartlands of music in United States, in Austin, Texas. How you doing there, Mike?
Cows and weather and rain and runny noses.
And lions and tigers
Great.
and bears, oh my, right?
That's it.
So we have a very special guest, and I am really pleased to have Matt Pinfield on the show. This is an absolute honor.
Yes.
Not to date things, but I mean, Matt, and Mike, I'm sure you have your own stories about this, but when you were on MTV doing the 120 minutes, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think you were the one that premiered "Smells Like Teen Spirit" Nirvana. I think you were the DJ on that night, and I could just remember me and my friends just hanging out when we first heard that song. We're just like, "What is that?" So, and I mean, we followed you all throughout your career in, like, the '90s and the 2000s. So it's great to have you on the show. Thanks for being here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Tom. It's good to be here with you guys. That period of MTV, of course, that was a golden era. I mean, even the '80s were as well. Of course, the '80s
Mhm.
were the beginning of it. And I was just like like every other kid who was watching the first five VJs and just so excited to see videos. See rock videos and see new wave and alternative videos or whatever. I mean, it could have been like Prince and Michael Jackson, whatever. My thing is, I loved just the idea of the videos were so brand new at the time. Other than
Yeah.
things, the thing that was crazy was, if you've seen, A&E ran a show called I Want My MTV,
Mhm.
and I'm only in it for a second. Me and Ricky Rackman kind of pop up at the end of it. Ricky
The
from
Headbangers Ball host.
Yep.
and after Ricky left, they tried this thing Super Rock, didn't work out too well. Then I did a show called Matt Rock, which was basically Headbangers Ball. So I was doing that and 120 minutes. And people still come up to me and go, "Hey, I love John Headbangers Ball." And I stopped correcting them because I didn't want to kill their buzz. You know what I mean? But the truth is, you look up Headbangers Ball, it's not listed there. But the truth is that for 3 years I did a show which was basically Headbangers Ball with called Matt Rock. The
Mhm.
reason it was called Matt Rock was the boss at MTV, Andy Schoen, thought it was funny to call it Matt Rock, like Matlock, like the Andy Griffith.
Yeah, a little play on words sort of
Yeah.
thing.
That's funny.
The only thing that was really cool was the guy who did all the graphics and produced my show, Austin Redding, went on to, do horror films and other animation and Avatar, and he's director.
Wow.
So the graphics that were used for Matt Rock were so cool and cutting edge. It was like nothing else that had ever been on MTV. It was almost kind of horror like, and it was fun. And then, of course, 120, you guys know, was just such a great and influential show. So both those shows were great. And because I got to tell you guys, I always straddled the alternative and rock world. I mean, I obviously grew up as a kid, you know what I mean, in the '70s. So I,
Mhm.
loved rock and roll from that period on, and good soul music and just everything. I was a sponge for music. So the opportunity to get to be on MTV was something I never ever expected, guys. I mean, it was one of those things where, I always wanted to be in radio. So I started in college radio in New Jersey. Then there was a station that signed on the Jersey Shore called WHTG in
Mhm.
1984. And when I found out it was there, I reached out to them and said, "Hey, I'd like to do a show there." And they were like, "Make a demo." And then
Yeah.
but one of the guys there, Mike Marone, he had recognized me from listening to me on college radio because he worked in an import record distributor warehouse and like a sales job, and so he would listen to the college station. So he was familiar with me, but then I started doing weekends, at that station. But I was also spinning in rock and alternative clubs for
You started out at Rutgers, right? On the
yeah,
radio there.
yeah, it was great, WRSU. So it was a great station. It was a great way to really help kind of nurture a local music scene. And also at that period of time when I first got on the air there, um, New Wave was happening. So it was like an interesting time to be there because New Wave was happening. And when I got there, before that, it was very much like a station that played jazz, Grateful Dead,
Yeah.
sounding, and Frank Zappa, and that kind of stuff, which is all good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's certainly Dead albums like Workman's Dead and American Beauty that I love,
Mhm.
but there was a whole new generation of music coming at that period of time. I mean, the doors had already been kicked down with, all the punk stuff, but people like Elvis
Mhm.
Costello and Joe Jackson and the
Oh
Police,
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, who I saw all three of those bands in one weekend in
Wow.
1978 when I was a kid, and so
That's
Clash and the Jam and all those bands, but I was still into rock too, like things like Thin Lizzy and
mhm.
AC/DC with Bon Scott, and then of course he died, and then Brian Johnson took over. But I just love music, so college radio was just I was dying to be on college radio. In fact, I had done there was a pledge drive for the college station, and they had a thing where you could buy to be on the air for an hour or 2 hours,
Hmm.
and friends helped me put some money together, and I bought 2 hours on the air. And I remember the chief announcer there, program director, going to me, "Man, you're actually really good." And I'm like 16 years old, and then I tried to kind of sneak my way into being a DJ there that summer, but then they realized I wasn't really a student yet, so
You know,
you
work
know.
your way in, anyway. And that it's funny because, and I, did a little research we all do before the show and such. So I was reading a little bit of your book, first of all, and also a little bit of your history, Wikipedia and such. So before you got on MTV, a few years before, you had a guest stint on one of the first seasons of The Real World. Now, was I note that like right around that time, like a few years later, that's where you ended up with MTV in 120 minutes. So, or 100, yeah, 120 minutes. So, you basically did some behind the scenes networking. I guess you saw the opportunity to connect with MTV when the opportunity arose.
What's really strange about it, and I'll tell you what's really wild about it, is the way I ended up in the real world and having that clip of me from that radio station, that I ended up being part time, and then I ended up running that station. I became like music director and
Yep.
then program director. And while I was music director, I won like back to back music director of the year national awards, which it brought a lot of attention to me through the music industry, other radio stations, other programmers, and then all the record companies. That's kind of how my like MTV found out about me. But the real world was right before that. I was still on that radio station, but the thing was, there was the guy named Andre
Uh,
Mhm.
in that band Rain Dance, and a lot of people don't know this, but one of the guys from Rain Dance is in Queens of the Stone Age. So like, yeah, he
Wow.
love that band.
yeah.
Love that
So,
band.
so great. So yeah, so
Now, Andre, just to like interrupt you for 1 second, Andre was the guy with the long brown hair, right?
yeah, he was great, and I loved. I liked his band. I played them on the radio. I supported local music on that Jersey Shore radio station.
My friend had a band that was pretty successful at the time in Jersey, and they were called Intuition.
I
And
remember yeah,
yeah, and they used to play Studio One and Packet and places like that. And he's actually helping us edit some of the interviews we're doing. His name is Steve Savona, and they played. I think it was the Chance in Poughkeepsie, and they played there with the guy Andre and the band. I remember it. It was in the early '90s, and that was a pretty big place. It was fun. I used to do their lights, and I had to climb up to a real professional lighting rig where the other ones were like looked like a little 4-track with some buttons on it, and
yeah.
this one's got spotlights and everything. But I remember that guy, and he was pretty cool. I went up to him because I didn't really watch the shows too much yet. I was still just into the music part of MTV, not like and then later on.
You
Well,
haven't lived until you saw 120 minutes, man.
Oh no! I was talking about like the reality show, like
Oh,
yeah.
okay. All right,
Well,
yeah.
not the other.
I'll level with you guys. I was not a fan of the reality shows, but
Mhm.
but I mean, the thing was, it all happened very accidentally because Andre was a regular at my club, the Melody, where I DJ'd. So oddly enough, years later, to repay the owners there that I'd spun there for years, I brought 120 minutes down there when the studios were being repaired. One week, we shot the show from the club that I DJ'd at
Nice.
for years. That's where I met Andre, and he was like a
Okay.
regular at my club. So he came in and he knew I was on the radio, and that I played him on like a local feature. So he
Mhm.
said to me, "Hey man, I'm doing this new TV show called The Real World," and nobody knew what it was yet. It was not on the air. We didn't know it was going to be a phenomenon.
Right.
And the truth was, it was an accident. What happened was MTV did not want to pay union. They didn't want to pay SAG, after whatever. They didn't want to pay any of that. So they were going to do a soap opera, but they had rented the house to do all this stuff, and then they went, "Oh man, we already put all this money out. Why don't we put some ads in backstage, like in that magazine?" And so he answers it, and then so the reality TV show was, for better or for worse, reality TV was born. And for me, I'm a guy who says for worse, but
No, I agree with you. I agree with you.
I mean, but I love country, and like here's how I feel about that. And like Chris Daughtry's a great friend of mine, and like I said, people used to rag on him for being from American Idol, but look, it was a platform for him to get discovered. That's all. He was a rock guy who wanted to play rock and roll. So I don't rag on people for looking for a platform to discover. But so the real world, that's how I ended up in that. And I'll tell you something really funny. That day, I forgot the camera crew was coming to the radio station. I had been at the club the night before, a party, and and I ran the station too. So I'd be at work at like 9 a.m. to the radio station. I was wearing a dirty shirt with like a stain on it with a rip. Like I got there. So when I went to work at MTV, every time that would come on, people would be yelling out, "Oh, hey, Matt's got that shirt with a stain on it," and like bust my balls and give me a hard time, just because.
Welcome to New Jersey.
It was repeated like 5 billion times to show that the Real World season 1. I mean, it was always on. So
could have worked with little stains,
well, not to jump ahead too. I don't know if we cut now. Not to jump ahead too far, because I do have to our show. It's kind of like one of our famous questions, which I want to ask.
Yes.
And then I want to just go back to one of the guests that we did have, because we were speaking about MTV, obviously, is Jeff Downs from Asia. Now he's in Yes as well, but he's also a member of the Buggles.
Yeah.
And that was the first video played on MTV. The video killed the radio star.
Yeah, Jeff Downs is a really talented, great guy, and look, I mean, that first Asia album was so good, and I have to say that because I like prog rock too. I mean, I listen to everything. I just love music. So. But him and Trevor Horn, were the first video that was played, and Trevor Horn went on to be a huge producer. I mean,
he actually ended up being the singer of Yes too, right?
Oh yeah. Trevor Horn did that for a while. I mean, look, those guys were totally into electronic, but they obviously were huge prog fans. So they, and the funny thing about Yes is those that run of albums, the Yes album, Fragile, and Close to the Edge, still sound unbelievable. I mean, the quality of the recordings, and their producer Eddie Oford, who sadly I heard lost his mind and went through some serious mental issues, which is kind of heartbreaking. But and he also did like early 311 albums. But that guy got unbelievable sound on Yes. So if you listen back to those 3 albums I'm talking about, I mean, Chris Squire's bass playing and Steve Howe's guitar are insane.
Isn't there some famous story of Chris Howe having them change the tiles in the studio so he could have the sound he wanted because he didn't like the way the room sounded? So if you're putting that kind of attention to detail in, it's like the first Boston album still sounds fresh.
Yeah. And it's incredible. I mean, it's a sound of its own. It's incredible when that record came out, nothing else sounded like it. And I think those are those pioneering albums where it comes out and people are like, "Wow, what is that?" And and nobody really. I mean, that first Boston album, nothing after that even sounded like that. Really, Tom Scholz,
he created the Rockman too, the amp, the power amp that you played.
That's the saddest story in the world is the way that Brad Delp died.
Yeah,
the singer. It's very depressing to hear that he was that depressed, and the way that he used the gas grill to commit suicide broke my heart, man. Like
I think you felt he was being.
If you like Boston or not, you just hear that story, and it's got to like really affect you because it's heartbreaking.
I think he felt like he was in the middle because he was playing with some of the other guys that weren't in the band, and then he was playing in the band, and then everybody's bitching at each other, and he just couldn't take it or something.
Yeah, well, there was a lot more than there was definitely some relationship stuff that was going on too with women, which is always you know what I mean? The femme fatale. I don't know, like relationships do push a lot of buttons with people.
Absolutely.
And with Brad Delp, I mean, that was the inside word that I heard, was that it was a combination of things, but I had an incredible voice, and it was just, I mean, that first Boston album, and the way he just take, I mean, if the only thing he ever sang on was More Than a Feeling, it would have just like this impact that it,
It's like check.
But it was sad to see. I mean, there's so many, rock and roll tragedies.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
I have a friend that does a crisis text line, and disclaimer: this is not an endorsement, but she's very, very deeply involved in trying to help people to stay away from that. And I guess the what they use as the tag is like the semicolon is like you are not alone. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a pretty cool thing. Just kind of keep everybody together as best as possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, You Are Not Alone is definitely, it's pretty incredible that, I mentioned this before. If one of my favorite albums of all time is The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and Spiders from Mars by David Bowie. It was really important to me as a kid. The last song on the album is called Rock and Roll Suicide.
Mm-hmm.
The very last lines of the song is "You're not alone, give me your hands," and he keeps repeating it like very in this impassioned way ahead of its time, because that expression "You're not alone" has been such an important thing in recovery, and in suicide prevention and so many other things with depression.
Now, before we move forward, that's a nice window to open. So one of the questions that we always ask, I think, is unique. I think it's answered in your book already, but as for the watchers, the listeners, and the watchers of the podcast, one of the questions we always like to ask our artists and guests is, what is that first album that you bought with your own money that made you say, I have to have this no matter how I get it, and you went out and you bought it?
I'm still trying to remember what that first album with my own money was, because there were 45s and there were albums.
Yes.
Right.
I do remember, buying, I mean, they were all different things. Sometimes it'd be a compilation album so that I'd have a lot of songs on it. Like there was this, we were talking about the superstars of the 70s.
1970s. Yep.
The K-Tel albums.
But I think one of the most important, the K-Tel albums were out then too. There were some of those were really good, and every kid had at least one of them. But I think a big turning point album for me, a couple of them were David Bowie's Diamond Dogs in 74, because of my age, and I heard Rebel Rebel, and that was obviously after Ziggy and Hunky Dory and those albums, Aladdin Sane. But then of course I went back to those records, and Space Oddity, because I heard Rebel Rebel and I went, this is the coolest thing ever. I'm a young kid, and you're hitting puberty and you hear Hot Tramp, I Love You So, and I'm like, it's got a cool tone, and that's the first thing you're thinking of when you're a young teenage boy, and you're like, wow. I go, that's cool. So I went out and bought that Diamond Dogs album, which is a very dark record, but one of my favorite albums actually of all time. And David was in kind of a dark place when he made it, but it was very interesting, and I still love the album. But it opened my door to my mind to Bowie. I also loved, I got turned on bands like Aerosmith by like my parents' friend's son. I went in his bedroom when I was like over there swimming in the summer, and he had like Aerosmith, Get Your Wings. Toys in the Attic wasn't even out yet when Walk This Way. And he had like Slade, and he had a bunch of these records, like, so it was that all that stuff was out at that time. Deep Purple, Grand Funk, T-Rex. And then I loved Thin Lizzy and early Queen too, because I just was always looking for new music, and so that Bowie record was really essential. And then also buying Get Your Wings by Aerosmith was a whole another thing. When I saw on the sticker that it had Train Kept a Rollin' on it, I had a Yardbirds album. That was this double album sampler. It said with Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, and Jeff Beck. And so I love Train Kept a Rollin' on that. So when I saw Aerosmith were covering that, I'm like, I don't know who these guys are, but they're covering that Yardbirds song. Me not knowing it was an old like swing song, like it had been around since the swing and blues days, but I just knew the Yardbirds song was so cool that I bought that Aerosmith album, and that turned me on to Aerosmith. So those were big records for me when I was a kid. Of course I love the Beatles, and like everyone else.
Yeah.
I had Beatles. Because of my older brother and sister. I had Hendrix in the house, so I had Axis, Bold as Love, and Are You Experienced? There was Cream, there was the Doors. You know what I mean? And of course Zeppelin was a big one too. My brother, guys, I had an older brother who was 10 years older, so he would buy me the coolest records. for like my birthday or things. When I was like 8 or 9, I'd have the first Led Zeppelin album. You know what I mean? And I didn't totally get it. I just knew that me and my friends loved Communication Breakdown because it said "suck," and we thought that was so cool. The word "suck," so we turn it down really, low, and then turn it up. Because this was like, we were little kids. And he bought me the Grateful Dead's American Beauty album. He bought me John Lennon Plastic Ono Band album. These are all like classic albums. So he always bought me cool stuff, and then I would just, what all kids do, what their older brothers and sisters would do back then is when they weren't home, you'd go in and raid their record, right? And so I took the Doors records, and and just I would just absorb music. And then I had a sister-in-law, right? Like my brother's first wife. She had a most insane singles collection that started with the British Invasion, like so all the Beatles, Dave Clark 5, Stones, Kinks. She had all that stuff, plus Buffalo Springfield. And she just decided to give me, like, they were, at this point, my brother and her were like together. They got married like at 18 or 19, some crazy, it was the 70s, you know what I mean?
70s were like that, yeah.
Yeah, so she was like, Matt, I know you love music. You can have my singles collection. So she gave me all her singles.
Oh, wow.
Imagine it was like a kid in a candy store. And I had 45s and I had some albums. But I mean, when I inherited all those 45s, I just absorbed everything on those records. And
awesome.
So that was really it. And
It's fun.
Go ahead.
And I was going to say, it's funny because do you remember Alwick Records in Jersey?
Yeah, of course.
So then the Livingston Mall, there was one. And, we used to go like a teenager, hang out there. And sometimes, you're just running around and you don't have a ton of money. And they had a bin, like the cutout bin. And it could be like $2 or $1 sometimes for some cassettes. And I remember I went in there and Journey was obviously big with the, Escape and all that at the time. And so I'm like, ooh, a Journey album. And I buy it and it's like 2 Journey albums. And then I get like Low Spark of the High Heel Boys and a whole bunch of stuff. And I was just getting into like hard rock music, And so I take them home and I throw in the Journey album and it's like Next and into, it's like a Nickel and Dime or whatever. Like it was like the pre-Steve Perry stuff where Greg Rowley they were just a prog band playing.
Right. They're prog jazz fusion kind of thing going on. Hey guys, can you hold on 1 second? I hate to have you can cut this later, but my daughter's cat just threw up all over right here.
Yeah, we'll pause. We'll pause. No problem. Pausing now.
So Matt, I'm sure you remember being in New Jersey, Alwick Records, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically what would happen was, you're roaming around the mall. That was what we did back when we were, early teenagers, hanging out in the mall, trying to follow girls around and get into trouble. And if I had money, I would buy something new. Sometimes I was the type that I just bought an album cover because the cover looked cool. And I might not even have heard the music. And 9 times out of 10, I got it right. But they used to have the bin there, and it could be anywhere from like $1.50 to $3-4 in the bin. And I picked up great stuff like Madman, Across the Water from Elton John, and Traffic, Low Spark of the High Heeled Boys. And then I thought I hit the jackpot with I bought 2 separate Journey tapes. One was called Dream After Dream, and then another one was said Next, but it was 2 albums. And I will tell you the one thing about the one album, Next, was just the prog version of Journey with Greg Rowley singing. So half the songs were instrumental, and then the rest of the stuff was like, kind of a mix of from that Santana stuff that led into the Journey. But the riff for Carry On Wayward Son was on there, and I had known that from the radio, and I never found out until later when I got a Journey box set that they actually opened up for Journey and they clipped it.
Yeah.
But the next album was funny because that one did have Steve Perry on it, and it was an import from Japan for some movie called Dream After Dream from Japan, and it had like 2 songs where Steve Perry sang on it, and the rest was like Indian chants and like real weird songs like called The Rape, and like I was like, this is not Journey,
It's pretty out there.
Yeah, so I didn't hit the jackpot that bad or that big, but I thought I got kind of robbed there on my journey, thinking I'm gonna get like some Lost Escape album, but no,
Exactly.
not lucky enough.
Like those were, like that and Infinity albums like that, they were really great.
Oh yeah, yeah, you can go back to even to that stuff, and it was great.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
What is it? Something to Hide off of the first album with Steve Perry is an amazing song.
Yeah, I see Steve on a pretty regular basis, or I did at least until the pandemic.
Mhm.
We're friends, and we have a lot of mutual friends.
Oh, nice.
And he's such a good dude. And it's a great story. I was over at Jerry Cantrell from Alice in Chains' house for his birthday when I hadn't seen Steve in a while. And when I lived here the first time when I was doing the Farm Club show, I would hang out with Steve and a bunch of friends pretty often. And I remember when I was going to work and do A&R at Columbia because Farm Club was ending, and that was Journey's old label. So Steve and I were talking about, he goes, he was starting to talk about my bosses to me and kind of explain how his bosses, towards the end of the Journey run were saying, oh, we need more singles. And he's like, what are you talking about? And then he goes, then I started my own label and I had a band and I go, you need more singles. Then I realized that
Yeah.
such a great guy. And I hadn't seen him in a while. So I'm at Jerry Cantrell's house and it was a cool day because it was Jerry's birthday and it was like, the guys you would expect, like Mike Inez, the bass player from Alice in Chains, and
Yeah.
made it down, and like guys, Billy Duffy from the Cult, and Dave Navarro, and all these other guys, and Denny, the original drummer from Chicago. He was what a dude he was, man. I love talking to him because I just love music from all different eras. But so I had not seen Steve Perry for a while, so I said to Steve, and now since then, we've hung out a lot, but this was a few years back, and I remember it was he had within that last year like come out of retirement on stage to sing with that band Eels.
Yeah.
And he did that song by them called "It's a Motherfucker," which is a ballad, believe it or not. Like when you see the name title, you're thinking, "Wow, that's going to be some heavy."
That's actually a great song.
It's a beautiful song. It's amazing. So Steve, I asked him about it. I go, Steve, that was so cool, man, that you did the Eels. And he goes, to be honest with you, man, going out there, I was a little scared shitless for the first time in years because he goes, I hadn't walked on a stage in so long, And he goes, but then they made him do like Love and Touch and Squeezing and a couple other Journey songs. But he said he had a great time and he's an awesome guy. He's been singing backup on some local bands out here, helping out some young guys. He's
That's
good.
Great. I find that some of the best artists, if they're able to be vulnerable, I mean, just by him telling you, like, a superstar being a little bit afraid going on stage after a while and being that vulnerable and then getting into the groove of things, that just makes them even better as an artist.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, no matter who you are, I mean, look, John Lennon threw up before he went on stage that night with Elton John, the last time he ever performed live. John Lennon was so nervous, a guy who had toured the world and been on stage and ruled the world and changed, the Beatles literally changed the world and changed the face of modern music. So when, he had to go on stage, he had a bet with Elton John, the story, as goes. Elton sang with him on that song, Whatever Gets You Through the Night, on the Walls and Bridges album. And Elton told him it was going to be a number 1 single. And John said, no, it's not going to be a number 1 single. And he goes, well, I'll tell you what, if it is, you have to come out of retirement and come on stage and sing with me when I play the Garden, because I'm going to be in New York, where you're living. And sure enough, Whatever Gets You Through the Night goes to number 1. What a great song, by the way. Best song on that album, by the way. Walls and Bridges. And so he goes up and they do Whatever Gets You Through the Night. And then he also does I Saw You Standing There. And I think maybe Lucy in the Skies. But he definitely did I Saw Her Standing There, which was the cool idea that the choice he made was a Paul song, And I think that was actually the last time John ever performed live, was singing I Saw Her Standing There.
Wow.
Years later, sadly, he was assassinated.
Yeah.
So, but it's one of those things where, like, even a guy like John Lennon and Steve Perry, sometimes if they haven't been on stage for a long time, it's, and you hear that about other people who walk out and rule the stage thing that they, before they go on.
Did you ever watch? Did you watch those clips of Steve though?
What did you think of him?
Well, he did like 3 or 4 in like a month, I think.
Yeah.
Once he broke the ice, he was wanting to be out on stage. So
Yeah.
he'd go out there, and you could hear he was nervous. He didn't want to go and like, go and try to maybe pull, hit the highest note in the world, because he hadn't sang in so many years. But he started doing his dancing, that he does, the Steve Perry dance, and getting into the crowd and making them, chant, sing back and forth with them. So that's just naturally in him. And, it tapped into there, it made me go, he's got to be having some music that's coming, because that's his way of putting his toe in the, putting your feet in the pool and testing if it's too cold or not. And then all of a sudden the great album Traces came out a couple years later. So just to have him back singing.
Yeah, and that's like Axl with Chinese Democracy before Guns N' Roses really reformed and everything. He was keeping his chops as fresh as possible. I mean, there was some falsetto that he had to incorporate, just, natural course of time, just trying to make sure that his pipes were pretty fresh. But I think once he got back with Guns N' Roses, I saw them when they first got back on stage. And I mean, it was almost like being there 20 years before, hit some of those high notes just like he did before.
Which is, it's not easy. I mean, one of the reasons why Zeppelin have not, there's 2 actual big reasons why Zeppelin have not reformed. And it's not because Paul Jones and Jimmy Page weren't willing to do it, but Robert doesn't want to do it. And
Robert, yeah.
Robert wants to live up to what he was.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. He basically said to friends of mine, he said, look, I don't want to rip people off. I can't hit those high notes like I did when I was a much younger guy, and I don't really feel like I want to tune down the sound that low in order to overcompensate. I think
somebody who's me and Tom have been our bandmates, previous bandmates, and I'm a singer and then a guitar player and songwriter, and I can sing pretty high, when I'm in the groove. And I saw him with Page and Plant in the 90s, and he killed it. But I mean, when you watch that 2007 reunion concert, the one where they really went and worked that hard at doing a full concert, with Jason Bonham in the background, it's tuned down about a whole step, but I'll take it because it wasn't lacking anything to me. Every band tunes down.
Every band does tune down, like you get to a certain age, because it's impossible. Unless you're older, your body changes everything. I mean, it's it's a dynamic. Everything changes from the time when you're a young man. So
unless you're a beast like Sammy Hagar, that just seems to
do it. Yeah,
get one of those voices that just never dies.
No, Sammy's a machine. Unbelievable. I was just talking to him last week because he's going to be. I mean, by the time this airs, it'll be different, but he's a guest on my show this Sunday night. But by the time this does air, people will be able to go to the 955KLOS.com website or their YouTube channel. And there's a great interview I did with Sammy talking about, Eddie and when he first joined.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we would love to get him on here at some point.
The name of the show is New and Improved.
Yeah, new and it's new and approved, like with an A.
Got it.
Cool. And it's it's a show I do on Sunday nights on KLOS, which is the big rock station in Los Angeles. Yep. And it's I do it 8 to 10, and I have different guests. So I'll have classic rock guests like Sammy, and I've had on there Angus Young and Chris Robinson from the Black Crowes and Michael Anthony from Van Halen. But I also have newer artists like like Royal Blood and Dirty Honey and Aaron Jones and the Pretty Reckless and Corey Taylor. So there've been, it's different people. And Nancy Wilson from Heart has a new solo record she's done, so she's going to be on in a couple weeks. But I just love, I love, again, I've been interviewing people for so many years, and it's like something I love to do. I know you guys enjoy doing this show. It's so much fun, right? It's just great to be able to talk about music with people. I mean, it's
absolutely. And I mean, one of the reasons that we put it together was the pandemic happened. Tom and I have stayed friends. He's a drummer. He was very loyal to me in putting I had a band that was successful, went on some personal things with getting divorced and stuff, and came back and got the 2 other guys that were in the band. One of them Tom hated, but he still played with me because of
Yeah, we fired the motherfucker. He
he
just
fired him. He
not
fired the
Mike.
guy.
He fired the other guy.
He fired the guy from my band, but it was worth it. I'll keep Tom over the other guy, and we played for years together, and had a lot of fun, and almost killed him on a couple of occasions.
Yeah.
He seemed to be our Spinal Tap drummer that never died, so that was good. And but we got back on like Zoom basically to kind of just talk to each other, look at each other, face to face. And then one of us said it, there's podcasts out there, but we are we are deep music fans.
You are.
And we figured during the pandemic, people didn't know it was coming, I guess. So there's new music that's out there. And why not help people kind of keep it out there to keep them going? And then, we plan on making some new stuff too, and support, support the artists that way that are local.
Yeah.
That need it even more than some of the established artists. And where we're at right now, I'll let you talk in a second, Tom.
Yeah.
But one of the things I wanted to say about having someone like you on is, while the first few guests that we've had are pretty much in the same vein of being hard rock guests. Simon Wright from AC/DC. We just had Bruce Kulick from Kiss with Toby Wright, the producer.
Yeah, Toby's great.
Yeah, he's great. I've interviewed him separate and then interviewed him with Bruce as a special guest, because he was an assistant engineer on Crazy Nights back in the 80s. And then he did right before the reunion, he did the grunge Kiss album, Carnival of Souls, because they wanted to sound like Alice in Chains and all that. And so there were some great stories, because right as they were making it, Paul and Gene were in the back room making the reunion tour go on. So we had some of those stories come on. And, I was a fan of yours, but it was more a little bit like I rejected. I'll give you complete straight up. I rejected you right away, because I was all metal.
Yeah.
And I was Headbangers Ball.
Yeah.
And, and you'd pop up and be like, nah, I don't want to watch, because the music was changing and I was pissed.
Yeah. Well, hey, a lot of the guys I know from those bands too, I have friends who were in tons of bands. They were part of some of the guys who were in hair metal bands, and they were like, dude, they go, we love you now, but man, we hated you then.
Like
because you were metal. And I accept that. It's funny because, but then what happened was all those musicians, and I'm friends with all those guys from Poison, from all those bands. I mean, I already knew the Bon Jovi guys, of course, because I grew up in Skid Row dudes, because I'm from New Jersey.
Right.
But I was friends with all of them. I used to work with Richie Zambora in a bar. But and I like the music. I love a great rock pop anthem. I mean, there's no question about it. But it was because I came on and kind of representing, the grunge thing and everything else at that period of time. But I was literally hanging out with Alice Cooper's drummer the other day, and he was saying that to me too. He's so funny. He goes, "Yeah, when we were younger, we were like, oh man, we hated that music." And he goes, and then we realized you were just a cool rock guy, and then you were actually.
I'll tell you a funny thing. The way I was, like, I had Bon Jovi's first album and second album before anybody had those albums. And then when Slip Ruin came out, I got pissed. I was like, they're stealing my shit, and then of course I let it go, because the music was good, so with you, what happened, I honestly think it took the flu or something, where I was stuck and I couldn't leave I was on the couch in my house growing up and just watching movies and TV, and things were just HBO back then, it was just like playing the same movie every 2 hours. And I was like, I gotta watch something else. And then, you had the Headbangers Ball, and then you came on, and I remember, I think I clicked John, and you might have been on like TRL Stump Matt or something.
Yeah.
And I thought that was cool. And then so I was like, I gotta check it out. And you were playing shit I liked. I just didn't give you a chance. And I was like, oh, I like some of these songs. Not everyone, but I like, and now going back, I like most of the stuff anyway.
It's always funny how in retrospect, I think that people are like that with a lot of things in genres. You're not alone, where they'll hear something from that period, and at the time they might not have liked it as much, and then they go, you know what? Now that I've been around for a while, I really actually do like that. You know what I mean? And I think people, it's the same way with people that were in alternative when they look at some of the hair metal stuff.
Right.
they are like, those were really good songs, you know. So I think it
Mhm.
works in both ways. And you know, I think that's a cool thing. You know, it definitely, you know, you're walking into a hot seat when you, you know, I went on and did my first 120 minutes, you know, with Depeche Mode, and then I came out and I told people what I did. I said, you know, I've done alternative clubs, radio, and did all that other stuff, and just kind of went on. But you had to have confidence, man. You had to go in there, and I'd never done TV before. I had no
Mhm.
experience. I never trained for TV. I never trained for radio. I mean, I just loved what I loved music. So those were the two outlets that you know that I wanted to be a part of, and it just so happened. It just was almost like a total accident that I ended up getting to do be on the air at MTV. So, and that's a really
And
cool
you know
thing.
what? You're still here.
You know
And
what's guys? You know how many years I've been doing, like, not counting college radio. I've been doing radio, even though I was, you know, doing it for, like, you know, like less than what you make for singing fast food, because I've done that like everybody else too. I've done worked at Roy Rogers,
Mhm.
worked at convenience stores and security jobs, did everything, taxi dispatching, like everybody else. It's good. You got to. I mean, it builds character. You got to do a lot of different things, and so, which I think is great. And truthfully, you know, I think it's great. It's another way to meet people and kind of, you know, just learn more about life. But for me, you know, it's amazing that even though, like, when I started out, you know, you're getting paid minimum wage to do radio. So I've been doing it now for 37 years. So I've been on the radio for 37 years, right? So I've been doing the show Flashback, which is syndicated through Westwood One. It's like a classic rock history show. There's a 4 hour and a 2 hour version of it. And it's on 100 radio stations in North America and on the Armed
Nice.
Forces Network, which is now called the American Forces Network, wherever we have soldiers in the world.
Mhm.
So it's on a carrier. So I've been doing that show for 10 years. It's unbelievable that it's 10 years already. And I'm like, what, 10 years? So
And that's cool because
Fly, right?
son-in-law is on the USS Harry Truman in the Navy.
oh, that's awesome.
Yes, and
He
we just
definitely hears me. You know, I'm sure he's like, or here, you know, he's probably got a choice. I'm not sure how many channels they have, but I
yeah.
know that I come on Saturday mornings, you know, for my 4 hour show.
There you go. Well, he's lucky he's home now. We just found out that they're having a girl, so their first baby.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that's grandchild number 4 coming.
Wow, that's amazing. But my daughters are
Didn't
adults.
even let me get to 50 yet. No,
Oh my God, and you're already your grandchild 4 times. That's awesome though, man.
no, it's cool. You know,
You
well,
know,
it's gonna happen when you have 6 kids. So
yeah.
I inherited 5 stepkids from 8 to 18 when I met my wife, and I had an 8-year-old boy. Speaking of my son, one thing I want to do, I'm going to add this in, Tom, because David, my son, he's more I guess eclectic in his music tastes. He can stump me on with stuff he finds these days. And when he heard that you were on, he wanted to come on and host with us, which I didn't do because I don't know where that could go.
But
But
we can do it another time. You know, maybe we could do it next time around with your son.
yeah,
That'd be cool.
so here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna ask. I came up with this. So whenever there's somebody that he came up with 2 cool questions, and it might lead us into the next part of where your career was. So I'm gonna call this David's Corner.
Okay, that's your son?
All right, David. Yeah. So you want to say hi to David there?
Hey, David, how are you?
All right. So we're gonna ask these questions. Where did you first hear about Coheed and Cambria, and what made them? What made you? Because you ended up being a Columbia Records A&R. What made you take them from Equal Vision to Columbia?
Well, you know, the thing was Equal Vision was looking to make a partner, but my truth was that, you know, I was looking to sign different bands, and I saw Coheed play when there were only about 40 people there. But I first heard on Second Stage Turbine Blade a song called Devil in Jersey City. And I thought, God, I've lived in Jersey City, and there certainly is the devil there, for no question about it. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm a Jersey guy, and I will, you know, I'm allowed to slag certain areas. I mean, there's some great people in Jersey, and just nice parts of Jersey City, too. But, you know, I just love the fact that they made reference to a song called Devil in Jersey City. So I listened to Second Stage Turbine Blade. I went to see the band play live. I knew that Equal Vision was looking to partner with somebody, and I went and met with the guys, and we hit it off. I was talking to them, and then of course there were other labels interested in signing them too. And usually what happens is there's a feeding. I call it a feeding frenzy. There used to be back then, and I'm sure there still is. It's a little different now because you're not going to venues, but A&R guys would show up at shows, or A&R women, and would like everybody trying to talk to the band or make a deal, or just kind of like get in the band's ear. And I knew the best thing I could do after, because I'd already met him and hung out with him, but I'm like, you know what, I want to try and close this deal. So I flew to England when they were playing in London, and I was signing another band from Manchester, and I took a train all the way down, and it's in my book too. A Virgin train all the way down from Manchester for another band I signed called Longview. And then I remember the guy I was with played me a demo of The Killers on the train, and it was a guy I was with. And I also tried to sign them, but on Def Jam ended up offering them more money, so they got the deal. But when I got down to London, to the Brixton Academy, famous venue, the Clash, they have that song, The Guns of Brixton. That's that area of town where, it's, we just really hit it off. So I met with the band. I met with our manager, Blaze James, Steve Reddy, who owns Equal Vision Records. And I met with the staff there, and they really trusted me. That was the idea we wanted to do. We were going to do a joint thing for In Keeping Secrets of Silent Earth 3. I love the record. I was around for a recording of that as well. And kind of involved on the outskirts for that second album. And then I did total A&R for the third one, for Good Apollo 1. So, but I was a big fan of the band, so I wanted to sign them. And, to this day, I'm still absolute great friends with every band member. They're like family to me, all of them. And, the thing that happened to Michael Todd was really sad to me, and I loved and cared about Michael very much. So that was a crazy situation. But I wish I love the guy. I wish him the best, and all the guys I'm still friends with. In fact, when they came to San Francisco, when I was doing a morning show there, living in San Francisco, and they did all of Good Apollo, Claudio got on stage right before the encore and thanked me for all the love and support. And the chant at the end of Welcome Home is what I came up with, that chant. You know what I mean? It goes, when it goes, whoa, 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 whoa. So that was, it was an idea, because I said to the guys when they brought in the pre-mix version of it, and I'd heard it from the demos up, but they brought it in, and all of a sudden at the end of the song, it's like basically trading off Travis and Claudio on guitar, those incredible riffs they're doing. But as it gets towards the end, I said, you know what, guys, it'd be so cool if you guys had a chant at the end of the song like you do in Keeping Secrets of Silent Earth 3, that song on the album before it, the second album, because when they would do that chant on that song where it goes, whoa, 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 the crowds would go bananas. I mean, people would go berserk. They'd be diving off the walls, the stage. So I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if we had a chant here, so it's like a thread through the albums? And so they went back that night and invited their friends into the studio and got them all to do that chant. And that stayed as a part of that song.
Very relatable too, something that everybody can jump in on and be able to kind of like ride that wave. Oh,
yeah. So it was really cool. So it worked out great, and I loved working with him. Tell you something, I still have a really great relationship with Claudio and Travis and Josh and the guys. And so and it's I toured Europe with those guys, which was such a great experience, and we just really bonded. And those are great memories for me. Those are, I'm glad I was doing A&R when I was doing it, because I got to do all those kind of things. And it's a very different world now in the A&R world. So that was a really good time to be doing it. And I really enjoyed it. So Coheed mean a lot to me. They really do. And I'm very proud of those records, and proud of them for the fact that they're such an incredible band, and they've continued to have this amazing fan base that follows them for their lifestyle and their music and goes with them every step of the way. It's a total lifestyle. It's like their fans are into everything from the graphic novels. Even if you aren't into the graphic novels and the story, the songs are great at face value too, if you're just listening to them.
Standalone, yeah.
And so, but no matter how much of a commitment or how deep you want to go with a band like Coheed, there's so much there. There's so many layers. And therefore, that's why so many people have been devoted to them for years and turn their children onto them. Like I remember seeing them at Radio City Music Hall. I was there that night, and there were people there that were kids that never were had no obviously no idea who I was because they never watched MTV when I was on there, or MTV was not really a thing anymore. But they were singing along with their parents to those Coheed records that I was involved with, and that meant the world to me. I mean, I loved it. So I think that it's just like any of the classic rock music that still stays that people love, or classic alternative music, or classic metal. The stuff that really holds up, it gets passed on from generation to generation, and it's really important to remember that songs that's what it's really all about. It's all about great songs, great artists, and stuff that becomes really timeless.
Yeah, even going back to the 45s that you picked up from your parents. I mean, you were in a musical family, and they had the Beatles albums around, and your brother grabbing things from when he was out, same exact thing.
Yeah, and so many kids did that, in America.
I had a few questions about things that you've been taking care of over the last several years, and I want to read a quote from your Twitter page that you put a few days ago. Another day, another reason to be grateful. Music truly motivates. It's the power of a song that gives you strength to take on anything. And if we cross-reference it with your book, All These Things I've Done, My Insane and Probable Rock Life, and All These Things I've Done is also a song from the Killers. So it's there's some correlations there. But I noted, like at the beginning of the book, you mentioned that the way that you relate to music is something that not the casual music fan really tunes in on. It's like for you and many different people like in the music industry, it's like it's just a way of life. Like you just tune into the music and you almost become part of it. And I get what you're saying there. During COVID, we all were in the lockdown, and I mean, some of your recent work. I mean, you did a podcast, In a Lonely Place, and I was listening to a few of those, and I'm just wondering what you found. Was there a difference in the way that the interviews went during the lockdown versus years before when you're in proximity with them, you're talking with them one-on-one? What was how do you feel that the dynamic was talking with all these people that most of you knew for many years, but now that you're behind the scenes, internet is the thing that's, how did it go for you? Yeah.
Oh, I enjoyed it. I mean, I think it was good. I think that all of us were all dealing with the uncertainty of what was going to be happening with the pandemic and how it was going to play out for all of us. And I think all the musicians, they're a lot of their income, and all the people obviously who work behind the scenes too. But a lot of these artists really didn't know where things were going to go. A lot of them were used to being on the road. They had families. They were home with their kids. I think that, one of the things that I got out of those interviews was I think the interesting thing about the Illinois Place interviews that I thought were really cool is there was a lot of talking about love for the music. And when we talked about some of the 10 of their favorite albums or records, and the reason that was there is because, music's always that thing that gets you through everything. And certainly music was a go-to for people like ourselves during the pandemic. There's no question about it, because you couldn't put on the news without seeing something depressing every
right
day.
right
Or every other hour, and you would drive yourself absolutely insane or into a terrible depression. So I felt the interviews were you could see there was a connection emotionally with some of those interviews to my friends, where I was like, I was just very grateful to be talking to them, and that we were alive after Adam Schlesinger died from Fountains of Wayne, who was my friend and my old AA sponsor, a guy who was involved with Music Cares, and then Hal Wilner, the guy who had done musical supervision for Saturday Night Live, for years, and was Lou Reed's best friend. I knew him very well. I had seen him a couple of months before he died. I saw Adam Schlesinger 6 weeks before he died.
Oh man.
So I was losing friends, dying real early during the pandemic. So that was all the stuff that I was dealing with, and I
Hmm.
was isolated like everybody else from like their family. So it was a difficult time for me. I think a lot of those interviews were really cool, but I definitely, that was shortly after that was when I relapsed and started drinking again. And then my friends were aware, they could tell that something was not right.
Hmm.
And, they just could tell there was a sign that they could tell that I was not in a good place. So that's
I
when we,
think now, at the moment, you're like a year in the clear now, right?
yeah, I'm a year next
Yeah.
Saturday. And by the time this airs, it'll be a year. So yeah, and there's no question, I'm staying the course. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not coming back. They always say it's one day at a time, which it is. It's 1 hour at a time. But I mean, I made a commitment, and it's so important to me because I have so much more clarity than I had a year ago. Like, there's just so much clarity, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I hear you. And by the way, in your honor, I'm drinking water tonight, just so you know, because I
Drink anytime you want. Here's the thing:
yeah,
my daughter can have a glass of wine in my house. She's an adult, right? I mean, if somebody wants to smoke some weed, I mean, she may hit a joint or whatever,
right.
or smoke a pipe a little bit, not like a bong or any of that shit. But I'm just talking about if she like has a vape. She's an adult. It's legal in California. If it helps her sleep, I don't judge people. And when I go out with people, I don't tell them not to drink. I don't like judge them. I don't
Yeah, yeah. You just
expect I don't expect people to change their behaviors for me. In fact, like when I go out and everybody else is drinking, I'm still having a great time because I'm just really happy to be totally in control.
with the
Uh,
friends, yeah. The control of self is, I get that, yeah.
the truth is, it's the most important thing is to know thyself. And at the end of the day, I know that I can't drink successfully anymore. I mean, for years I did, but then of course you eventually you get to a point. You got to remember, I DJed in nightclubs since like 1982. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? So I mean, it was free alcohol all that time, right? So eventually that'll catch up with you like anything else. So for me, it was a really important move for my health, and just for your mental health, for your physical health, for your spiritual health.
Yep.
Every bit of that was so important to me. You know what I mean? And I'll tell you, Tom, Michael, it's been great because I just can't. It amazes me how clear I see things, and it's nuts because I'll come in to have a conversation with somebody that like in past years where kind of the last time I was involved with them, I was still I was still actively drinking, and I wasn't off the rails necessarily, but
Right.
difference is I'm just so clear, and the clarity is incredible, and I'm grateful for that. And I see, when you see my posts, I always let people know I try to share a positive message with people, just like you guys said earlier when you're talking about you're not alone. That's a very important and powerful expression and saying for people. But I think it's because of all the negativity and all the fighting and all the insanity during this pandemic, all the fighting over politics, fighting
Oh,
over
it's
like
horrible.
whether things are
Oh,
hoaxes or like I just don't want to be a part of any of that because it's not. I want to be in the solution, not in the problem, and I want to be. I want to bring something positive to people because I feel like I had an enlightening experience where I got the opportunity to get my shit together and to
mhm.
clean up and and get alcohol out of my system and and it could have gone really bad. I could have continued to do that. I wasn't doing it very long, but when I relapsed, it's quick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden you're like pounding again, and you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So it was just the best thing in the world that happened to me,
And
and
just to say, because I follow you on Facebook, and that is one of the things that, aside from your career, which is obviously impressive, there's a few people that we've interviewed, and you sit down and you open up to learn about them, because even if you might have followed somebody, you don't know every detail about them, and you sit there and you get hit in the face with that resume, and you're like, whoo, but for me, it was a lot about what you had been through personally that attracted me to want to speak to you too. And and speaking for Tom, and I want you to jump in here. That was one of the things, the kind of the rules we had with coming up with this podcast. Enough with the, you know, people bickering at each other about politics and all the negativity. And, you know, these days it gets to the point where, you know, you never, we're all individuals. So we're never going to agree on 100% of anything. Even if, you know, we're best friends, it's going to be like, I like chocolate ice cream and I like butter pecan, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And nowadays people are like, I hate you, you know?
Yeah. Oh, it's kind of crazy. You're right that it's, you know, that people, are just getting really mad at each other and, you know, on like on social media, unfriending each other, and families aren't talking to each other. It's
Oh,
crazy. I'm like, for me, it's like, you know what? I just love my friends, my daughters. I love rock and roll. I just love music, not just rock. I mean, rock, I love soul music, I love all kinds of music. But I just, you know, I don't know, man. I just like the infighting is, and for me, that's why you'll never see me post about politics, because I think it's a lose-lose. No matter what your political views are, someone's not going to agree with them.
right.
And
Yeah.
you're not going to change someone else by fighting with them online. You're not going to change their opinion or their
Yeah.
view, you know?
Especially if there's that disconnect. The written word is a lot easier to debate with than you know, speaking with someone like this. It's just it's a different dynamic.
Yeah, and I'm just I want to use social media for good and just be of service and try to spread a positive message to people, you know?
Mhm.
And, you know, the things that keep me going, which are my friends that are in recovery and my family, but also more the music is the thing that always has gotten me through. Music has always been such a powerful thing in, you know, in my life and for everybody's life. If you love music, some people it's just peripheral and it's just around the, you know, it doesn't matter as much. You know, it's you know, that's, I mean, the difference is, you know, what you were talking about, Michael, when you used to have to go to the store and take a chance on a cassette and you buy it, you didn't know, maybe you'd find a gem on there and maybe you didn't. I mean, that you had to actually invest your time and your effort into like finding music. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the way that it is for young people right now, because that's just the way it is. So every generation has its own way of music delivery, and whether it was 8 tracks in the 70s for some people, vinyl was always through that better than 8 tracks. 8 tracks were just only really about the car, but some people had them at home. And then, you know, cassettes, vinyls, then CDs, you know, and now streaming. But no matter what that way of delivery is, I mean, it's just about how the music hits you and how it affects you. And I
Mhm.
think that's the most important thing. But I don't belittle or begrudge young people. There's a lot of great young artists out there and very creative people. There's a lot of static at the same time as well. So there's so much stuff. It's harder to find sometimes all the really good stuff, but you just have to put more effort into finding it. Maybe you don't have to put as much effort into actually playing it when you discover it, because you can press a button and play it. But there's that much more stuff you have to sift through to find the things that really matter to you musically. So, you know, there's one thing that you've lost, there's another thing you've gained. So it's, you know what I'm trying to say? So it's, but I'm all for, you know, streaming, you know, as long as artists get compensated.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's my biggest thing. I want artists to get compensated. Because it is great when I can just sit there and go, like, I'm getting in the shower at night and I'm like, oh man, I want to hear that old like song by some band, and then I'll sit there and I'll literally like make a miniature playlist for the shower. You know what I mean? And it's in, and I'll just put a speaker in there and go. But you know, I still like. It's funny how I, you know, still have a lot of CDs, but I listen to, and I'm sure I have cassettes in storage too, everything. But I listen to either vinyl, just because, or I listen to streaming. It's like I'm to both extremes, and I think a lot of people do that sometimes now. If they decided that they want to invest in some vinyl, but
I got my wife gave me for either Christmas or my birthday a couple years ago a vinyl record player, and she's one of those people that she actually saved all the stuff from way back in the day, so she actually has her old Atari and
that's cool.
like the old albums and everything, and they still work. And we have a place around here called Half Price Books and More, and they actually have like vinyl records that you can go in and buy them. And it trying to adjust my mic there because I did my inhaler and Tom is telling me it's low. So I think it's me with the. I forgot what I was saying.
There we go. We had to take a little pause. We just did an audio check and everything like that. But you know, I guess we could, we could start wrapping up. I know Bill, Matt, you got a full night ahead of you.
Yep.
So I just wanted to say that I'm really appreciative. I mean, aside from all the things that you've done lately, and I'm gonna I subscribe to a shit ton of your stuff just in researching you, because it's really good just to reconnect with you, through the airwaves. But just bringing me back in time, and going back to the MTV era, when it was really the MTV era, in my opinion, it's just great to be talking with you, and all the people that you've interviewed. It's just amazing.
I'm a very blessed guy. I mean, I got to say that I know I never take for granted, that I've interviewed everybody from like McCartney and the Stones to like, the Zeppelin guys,
Wow.
that are live, to, multiple times with bands like U2, and, I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, I've interviewed almost all of my heroes, and then just, and so many, and I'm very blessed and very grateful that I've been able to do that. And I never take it for granted. And for me, it's always about the artist. It's always about the music. It's not about me. I'll bring some things up when it's relative. I don't like dominate it with, I like to, people want to hear what these artists have to say. But when I will bring up something that's relative to them, it's so that it actually spawns something else in their thought to talk more about. So, but I love it, and I think it's great. And I've been I've had a really blessed career so far, and I'm still out here going, man. And I'm very, very grateful for that.
That's it.
You got the energy
what we
of
got.
like if you just started as a DJ, like bam.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I've just never lost the passion, and I'm not going to give it up. I'm just so grateful. So I just,
Amen.
It was so awesome to hang out with you guys tonight, man.
Oh yeah, no, our honor. And one thing I want to say too, for you and for Tom, we talk about positive things, and you've definitely given us a lot of that infectious spirit that you have. I'm very thankful of being able to speak with someone like you. And because I was a little snarky when I was younger and didn't check you out right away, I now get to go back and YouTube and watch all those old shows. So I have a whole bunch of stuff that I'm relearning about you. So that's cool. Two, thank you, Tom, for being with with me here doing this. There's occasions because Tom runs his own company, and if you want to drop a little thing in there, Tom, and promote it. He has his own web design company and stuff. And
awesome. Tom, where are you based?
Well, we're in New York. We're about 45 minutes from New York City. It's Rockland County, New York.
Where the Bowie guys are from. Like all those guys are up there.
Yeah,
like
pretty much in that area. And one of the things that I've been trying to work on, it's part of what we're trying to do, is there's a stadium that holds about 10,000 people in Rockland County. It's called Rockland Boulder Stadium. And I think that back in the day, we had a few, smaller concerts like the Beach Boys 38 Special, Darius Rucker, and so on. I think it'd be great as just like a stop by, let's say, for instance, somebody's hitting Madison Square Garden, and then they're going to be doing, let's say, Bethel Woods. It'd be a great Wednesday or Thursday night concert that they can run on their way, on their way up. So trying to do something with that. And interviewing some stars along the way. So it's cool.
Yeah, well, I really enjoyed doing this with you guys tonight. It was great.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Tom, it's really great to hear about your company. And Michael, I'm glad you finally you stayed home that day on the couch with the flu and decided that you liked me at that point. You were cool with me.
Well, I never disliked you.
Yeah, it was the music you meant.
The program director for MTV I had an issue with. All right.
Yeah.
I was wondering how you'd react to that.
Yeah. Oh, I thought it was cool.
Yeah, but I was honest, so.
It's honest.
No,
yeah.
but I like honesty. And you know what? Don't think like, I haven't been in situations before where like, you go into a new job in a new market and radio, and there are people there with knives out, like where they're like, well, I mean, a perfect example is when I went to San Francisco to do mornings on KFOG in 2016. They did not tell me that they were letting a bunch of people go. So, I get there And there are people that buy like about 5 months, 4 months, 3, 4 or 5 months into when I'm there, people come to an event and they go, you know what, man, I didn't want to like you, but I think you're awesome now, and it was not, and that meant the world to me. Like, that people realized I was a really just a nice guy and I loved music, and it wasn't like I wasn't coming in there with some big ego guy. It's just like this, it happens, where you end up sometimes working at a job where things change format or change management, and it's and you're going to go in there. There are definitely going to be some people that aren't happy about it, but at the end of the day, it's the odds are really good that it turned a lot of people's changed a lot of people's minds.
Well, if as Tom likes to use the term, full disclosure, it wasn't you that I didn't like. It was when a video came on and it wasn't something I wanted to see. And you know what I mean? If you had a nice personality, it was cool. It could have been any other show, but if it was Megadeth or Metallica after instead of REM, who I liked anyway. It was just times are changing, and I didn't want to go with it.
Yeah, and I love I love Megadeth and Metallica, and such a my relationship with both bands. Mustaine and I, just shortly before the pandemic, he wanted me to be the guy that came down to Nashville, where he's living now, no longer in Phoenix, Arizona. And I did a whole thing with him for the Recording Academy, where I interviewed him, and he showed people how he wrote Megadeth riffs.
Nice.
And I did all that other stuff with Metallica back then because I became their guy at MTV.
I will have to say, because we've been focused on more of the artists that I grew up with, and Tom's a little younger than me, so he's more in your wheelhouse of time there, like the alternative and the grungier stuff. I cannot find how to get the contact info for half of these guys that I love, like Alice in Chains or any of these bands. It's really hard to do. A lot of the people I just message on Facebook, like you, and you're there. But some of these guys, I'm trying and I want them on, and I think they'd have fun coming on. You could attest to that, and so we can branch out, and just do everything 80s or something.
Yeah, well, like as I see people, I'll look into it for you. Just stay in touch with me through email or messenger or whatever, any way you want to do it. And
okay,
as I see people, because I know what you're into, so it'd be cool, and I wouldn't mind recommending somebody to come do it with you because I enjoyed my experience with you guys.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Tom? I'll close it out.
No. Say what you're going to say, and then.
Okay, yeah, I just want to respect your time because you got to boogie out, Matt. Yeah. So it was a pleasure having you here. Just everybody, thank you. Matt Pinfield, new and approved on 95.5 KLOS in Los Angeles. And on a personal note, please check out his book, All These Things I've Done, My Insane Improbable Rock Life. It's a fantastic book. I'm still reading through it, and I like your stream of consciousness writing. So I'm enjoying it very much.
Oh, thank you. It means a lot to me, Tom. I really appreciate you checking out the book, and thanks for having me on your show, guys. I enjoyed doing it.
A pleasure.
A pleasure, and hopefully we can have you back.
Absolutely, you will. And Michael, feel better, man. Get over that bronchitis, my brother.
No, I'm getting.
I don't like,
That's why the mic went low. I had to use my inhaler.
Yeah, no, I get it, man. Anything because that breathing is always that's no fun. I get it. Guys, have a great weekend, all right? And thanks for
enjoy Bill Burr. Tell him hi. Tell him to come on.
All right, I'll talk to him. I mean, I don't know if he'll do that, but
one step at a time.
I know. No, I know. I watch he does the show with Bert Kirshner, his podcast. Yeah. I'm religiously watching that every time they put out a new episode.
We're gonna go. All right.
Mortimer.
Take care, guys. Have a great night, guys. And thanks for having me.
Thanks, too. Thank you.
All right.